What would you do about if your team has been working with you for a while and they have work already done while you're trying to make the corporation?
You want to get an assignment. You want to get an assignment of any work already done to the name of the company, once the company exists. The reason again is right now, if you've got 6 people all working together on a game, you've got 6 people who all own a portion of that game and have independent creator rights, independent copyrights and other rights to various aspects of that game. And that is great right up until 5 of you decide to sell it to Blizzard and one of you thinks, nah, I hate that company. So that one guy just precluded your entire sale unless you can figure out how to sell your game without anything he contributed.
So you're saying like they would sign it over to the company? Okay.
Yep. There's a assignment of intellectual property rights that you just have them go in. Anything they've created for the game up till today is assigned to the company. Anything that they create from today on is a work for hire owned by the company. And that's something you can, again, put in their same employment agreement. All of these things can be encapsulated in one agreement, or they can all be done in 6 different documents. It just depends on how you want to handle it and the progress that you want to be making. You also want to have, in addition to any assignments and work for hire agreements, a non-disclosure agreement. Because you don't want everybody going home and saying, hey man, I'm working on this great new game idea. What a fantastic idea. This is going to blow the doors off the industry. It's the best thing ever. And have the guy he's talking to say, yeah, that is a pretty good idea. I'm going to go make that first. And then guess what? So you need to have a confidentiality agreement, a non-disclosure agreement that says, you're not going to talk about this when you're outside the office. And when you're inside the office, you're only going to talk about it to people who need to know. We've got multiple groups. That group doesn't know what this group is doing. So again, you put that agreement in your employment agreement.
And from my experience, that's not a might happen, that's a will happen.
Yes, it did happen.
It did happen. Twice.
So these are all things, I mean, these are not just things that I'm suggesting are good ideas. These are things that will absolutely destroy your company when things go wrong. Now, are there companies out there who didn't get them and things didn't go bad and things are, you know, cruising along and everybody's happy and loves each other and makes a lot of money? Probably, although they never come see me. The ones that come see me are the ones that go bad. And when the ones go bad, companies go broke and games die on the vine. And really any one of these things missing can absolutely destroy your company. And it's not just your company. You know, I've got a client right now who decided he was going to be filming for a TV show and got pissed off at his producer and fired his producer and, well, get a work for hire agreement. Now who owns that film? The fired producer. Yay. So he comes to me and says, what do I do? And I said, pay the guy. Because you can pay him or you can pay me, but paying me isn't going to do any good. I can't get it back. I don't have the contracts I need. So these things can make or break your company. And really, none of these documents I'm talking about, none of these steps that I'm talking about as far as incorporation or starting your business is going to take you more than an hour each. But okay, go do them, get them out of the way, and now you've got a company up and running that you never have to think about again. You've got your document. Anybody else comes on the company, they sign this document. Anybody else comes into the LLC or corporation, they sign on the operating agreement. Once you've got it in place, you don't need to change it all the time. You need to look back at it once a year and make sure that it still makes sense, and you don't need to tweak it. But you don't need to change it. You don't need to have new ones. You make them once, you use them, as long as they're good. And you know, at the end of the day, now you've got a company that's well protected and can keep what it's created, can market what it's created, and can protect itself when claims come against it.
To have all this like company and say it's not making profit, you just want it there, you still have the annual payment.
Yeah, the payment is just for the government for the right to have that name.
Yeah, so. Okay.
So the payment is basically locking down your right to have the name and your ability to have that corporate shield.
Okay.
So it's something that you pay for the right to use, whether you're making money on it or not.
So the government filing fees and everything aside, what's a ballpark range we can expect to pay to an attorney to walk into their office with a very vanilla, very plain LLC structure and walk out of the office with operating agreement, articles of incorporation, employee agreement that's going to be a good one, worth the paper it's written on? What can we expect to pay an attorney to set us up?
Well, are you in Georgia or California? And more importantly, who did you go see? Because there are lots of good business startup attorneys who may sell you a business startup package, and that will be much less expensive than, for example, come see me. But that's because they're going to sell you a business startup package that's much the same as what you're going to get from LegalZoom. There's nothing wrong with it, and they're not going to do anything wrong with your business, and your business will be very good, but it may not be catered to the IP-heavy, game design-based company that you're trying to start. It's going to be the same kind of corporate documents that he's going to give to the guy who wants to run a restaurant and the guy who wants to run a shoe store. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying anything negative about that business model. But if you go to someone who is less expensive because they're doing them in volume, you're going to get a volume package. If you go to somebody like me, I'm going to create you something that's catered entirely to your company, but I'm going to create you a new one every time. So I'm not going to copy hers for him and his for him and his for him. I'm going to sit down with each of you and make your own company. And that's a different cost. Now for us, I know my cost. That's what I do with it. But we charge for an LLC registration with an operating agreement $1,250. Now, that's pretty steep, but that includes everything you need soup to nuts to start up the LLC. We get you your business license, we get you your books and records, we get you all the things that you need to have to be a corporation and handle all your filing fees out of it as well. So that's what we would charge for an independently created document operating agreement. For your NDA, your employment agreements, if you wanted to do them independently, they may be as little as $100 or $250 each on a flat fee. If you wanted to do one mass employment agreement that was then going to be a 25-page document, obviously we charge you a little more. It would just depend on what you want in there and how complicated your business practice is. But often those are things that attorneys can do on a flat fee. You know what you're going to get, you know what you're going to pay before you walk out of the office.
So we can do all these things basically on our own, just repeat.
You can do them all on your own. But again, what I would highly recommend is if you create these on your own, or you get them from LegalZoom, or you use a document template, go ahead and take them in, find somebody who will give you, a $200 initial consultation and sit down with you and go through your documents and say, yeah, these are okay, you're going to be fine, or hey, no, don't do this because this language is terrible. I'm going to give you my favorite example, and then I'm going to turn you over to Jessica. But the documents that you get online, they tend to have language in them that say things that seem like they mean one thing to a normal English-speaking citizen and actually mean something very, very different to the guy that wears the black robe and decides your case if it gets that far. The most glaring example of that is something called best efforts. If you see best efforts in your contract, don't sign that contract. Because you look at best efforts and you would think, best efforts, that means I'm going to try really hard to do what I'm supposed to do under this contract. If it says I'm going to use best efforts to deliver this to you by Tuesday, then I'm going to really try to make that deadline. And if I don't, I'll feel really bad. But what best efforts really means is that if you're going to make that Tuesday deadline and it looks like you're not you're going to hire another crew of 200 and you're going to bankrupt your company. And if you're on the way to give it to me and you're going to be late, if you don't run over your grandma in the street, you better run over your grandma in the street or the law is going to say you didn't use your best efforts. It, again, is one of those things that can destroy a company because what's required as best efforts isn't commercially reasonable efforts. It's not the efforts a normal person would take. It's above and beyond what any human being would do. And yet you read that and everybody thinks it seems like a good idea because we all want to do our best.
Yeah.
So don't sign that contract. But that's the kind of thing that sneaks up on you. You don't think about that when you're reading the form document you downloaded from the internet Because when you read it, it doesn't sound like it says what legally it really says. And there's lots of little gotchas like that that can be interspersed throughout the contract. So, well, there's Google.
Or you can go to law school.
Right, yeah. Westlaw only costs $700 or $800 a month, so you can always sign on to Westlaw that we use and do the research. I would hire a lawyer. That's really the right answer. All right, let me turn you over to Jessica so we can talk a little bit about tax, and then if everybody's still awake, we'll do some questions.
Yeah, I'm actually not doing tax, it's just basic.